that they don't believe in a factual reality. It's that their politics is like spitefully rejecting the concept of facts, right? Like
I
they'll
mean,
believe that the government is crafting hurricanes before they believe that that global warming is causing them. It's a very common, fairly common belief anyway.
I mean,
Uh,
one, I mean, I reject facts in the sense that I'm a Foucauldian kind of person that rejects this kind of the like a government having a monopoly on truth, or these big institutions with oppressive histories getting to decide certain narratives.
sure,
And yet
sure.
I believe in that global warming is a thing, and it's hard for me to articulate the difference between a leftist kind of critique of power and truth versus a conservative kind of critiquing these same institutions on often similar grounds.
Well, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like Foucault doesn't have it so that the very concept of fact should be thrown away under a
Yeah,
train. He probably, I think he would believe something like facts are indistinguishable from the systems and structures that produce them, which should give us rise to think about what kinds of ways that facts cause, what kinds of outcomes the facts we believe produce, right? And what kinds of systems are going into them. But, if Foucault didn't believe in facts, I think he would have trouble having a politics in the first place, which is, I
I
think,
mean,
what
he
he.
was criticized very much for that. Like that was the basis of Habermas's critique of his stuff. And so there is a kind of a contradiction in that line of thinking, which I still subscribe to, but it's hard to parse in a
Right.
time when post-truth is also destroying the planet and like
No, it's
wrecking the
interesting.
world.
I guess I still see there as, and honestly, I've only read a few of Foucault's books. I'm not so familiar with like his broader political projects, but I feel like there is a way to have a political project as a Foucault lover. I imagine anyway. There's a way to. I doubt that Foucault would say whether the Earth is getting warmer or not is, uh, merely a mirage, and that we have no way of knowing what's going on because the apparatuses that we use to create knowledge are themselves, uh, infected by power and controlled by power. Um, because power isn't evil, right? It's just power.
Hmm.
But I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe I'm just not as into Foucault as I thought. Maybe I'm just not the fan that I thought myself to be.
fake fan. No, I mean what you're saying makes sense. Yeah, it's I think I have my own ways of justifying what I believe, but then if I wanted to convince a right-wing person what I believe wouldn't make much sense, and that's hard to deal with.
Well, like, could you give me an example? Could you draw out for me how this would go in your mind and the conservative's mind? I'm curious about what you're.
I mean, like I did my thesis, undergrad thesis on right-wing anti-mask movements against like COVID masks.
Yeah.
And one of Foucault's big theories is about um, how like medical institutions or institutions of knowledge and from like governmental institutions control bodies in the service of this kind of instrumentalizing gaze that's kind of the basis of power in a capitalist societies, like controlling bodies and um, the regulation of pandemics is in the 16th century was one way that that system of power came to be, and it's a system of power that very much is behind a lot of the travesties of the 20th century and racial caste systems and
Yeah, these like fundamental thoughts about like using pandemic and its control both as a way to justify the state apparatus intervening in certain ways, but also as a way of reifying like cleanliness and dirtiness as a
yeah.
concept, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But then, so then I have this kind of framework in my mind, and then I'm doing this thesis on anti-mask people in the the world, and they're coming. It's hard to say like I think that the biopolitical regulation of bodies is responsible for so much suffering, but at the same time I'm for like mask mandates in times of pandemics. And it's not just like the right wing people who were against masking. Like I one of the other case studies that I had were indigenous groups in Mexico who were against masking from a more left-wing perspective because they had been like oppressed by the Mexican neoliberal government for so long, and now the government's kind of imposing this mask mandate. And so there was this kind of wave of more indigenous left-wing populist
Mm,
anti-mask movements in Mexico, and they're using similar slogans against the government that I would agree with in principle, but then they're using it to reject masks and pandemic regulation. And it's like how do I position myself as someone who kind of believes in these slogans fundamentally, but who still believes that, in a society where we all kind of have a stake in that society. We should do our best to like participate and making that society better, and that masks are a part of that. So there's just like a tangle of stuff in my
right.
brain that's hard to disentangle.
I guess I would just say that if like if our ultimate takeaway from Foucault or from whatever structuralist philosopher who wants to look at society through power, whatever, um, if our main takeaway is like government intervention bad because power and truth bad because power, then those philosophers just aren't very good. They're just not very helpful. They're just not very good at doing what their job is, which should
Hmm.
be to I don't know, make the world better in some way. Like clearly it would be an issue if our only takeaway ever was to just sort of accept that the government never doing anything to benefit the lives and protect the lives of its citizens it is itself an act of power, right? There's no denying that. It's not like that's an escape from government influence, an escape from uh, as is very obvious, can be a part of an authoritarian regime. Like right wingers hate these masks as sort of this fundamental affirmation of their power in society, right?
Hmm.
So it's just not a very easy nut to crack, I'd say. It's not super easy to come to one conclusion or the other based upon the work of Foucault, right?
Yeah,
Um, because every system does horrible things. There's no
for
like,
sure.
yeah, but I don't
Just
know.
pick the least horrible one, hopefully. All right.
Sorry, I feel like I'm not doing a great job.
No, this is fantastic.
I
No, I love these discussions, these types of discussions, even if we don't end up solving racism. I
think I
think,
might actually. I
okay.
actually just had an idea as you were talking. I maybe could just figure it out right now. Yeah, that's crazy. Thank you so much.